with my good friend Todd Stiddelberg, the Antler King himself, and I'll be brutally honest with you, there is no one I know in this entire world, and I know a lot of people in these niches, that are more qualified to discuss what our topic is today. That is, Todd, how do we maximize inches? How do we get as close as possible to allowing the bucks that live in at least part of our property home, how can we get them to come as close as possible to meeting their maximum genetic potential for racks?
Great question. I think we all understand that most deer are going to mature and have their largest racks somewhere between 4 and 6 years old. And some of those deer, if they were on the perfect diet, may never get over 150 inches.
Mm-hmm. Even if your mom and dad gave you the ultimate in nutrition when you were growing up, could have you reached 7'8"?
No.
Why?
Just genetics, you know?
You were born with a genetic cap. That
Yeah.
This, if everything goes perfect, this is as big as I can get.
Yep.
But unless we start dealing with artificial hormones and stuff, you ain't getting any taller than this.
No.
Yep. And that's the exact same thing when it applies to bucks, correct? Every single buck is born with, this is the max I can naturally kick for antlers.
No doubt. And so, if I was in an area where I could legally feed, I would definitely be on a feeding program for free-ranging deer. We're talking free-ranging deer, we're not talking behind fence. But irregardless, I would be on a feeding program. Unfortunately, I cannot. It's not legal where I'm at. So I got to do it with food plots. Years ago, when we were able to legally feed in Wisconsin, I would have feed out available for the deer, but we would see an ebb and a flow. Mm-hmm. When my food plots were really producing, they didn't touch the feed. But in the winter months, boy, they were pounding it. And in that critical time period, in February, March, and April, they really hit it hard. When we're just gonna focus on food plots to try to give them everything they need, we really gotta think year round. We can't just think, okay, I'm gonna plant clovers in the spring and that's gonna be great for antler growth spring, summer, and early fall.
If you can't do it year round, what you really wanna do is obviously over hunting season, because that's why most of us are doing this,
Sure.
is partially why most of us are doing it. The other part is we're trying to do some good. So if you're trying to do some good, and in some places, midsummer in Wisconsin, there's not a lot of nutritional stress, generally speaking.
No.
That is why fall, winter, spring cereal rye is such an incredibly good product for those that are trying to help whitetail nutrition.
Yeah.
Not only is it a good draw during the fall, it goes dormant during freezes and it kicks back to growth. Todd has got some fall, winter, spring growing down in his garden. You will see everything else is brown and drab, but that garden is killer green and about this dang tall.
Yeah.
We overemphasize how bad winter is on whitetails, and winter's not a good, but it's those late springs that end up really slaughtering
That's
us.
really tough. Yeah.
And fall, winter, spring is our insurance policy against the late spring.
You know that, and that's true. And I talked before about year-round nutrition. So I want to have clovers planted. I want to have alfalfas planted for that spring, summer, and early fall. That's going to provide antler growth. It's going to provide the does the nutrition they need to produce a lot of milk. It's going to produce the protein and energy the fawns need for structural growth. But what happens when our clovers are consumed, frost hits, and now the deer are going to have to basically try to get through the winter on their own.
On sticks.
And exactly right. And so that's where the fall, winter, spring is huge. I just going to tell everybody that's watching, you need to have room for it in your food plot arsenal each and every year.
Final thoughts brought to you by Huntworth. One of the things I do on almost every single brassica plot I plant, every single bean plot, every single corn, I go ahead, when the brassicas get about that tall, top seed, about 100 pounds of fall, winter, spring in on top of it, right before a good rain. When the crops are starting to yellow, top seed, right about, so now you're killing at least 2 birds with 1 stone. I mean, you talk about, you've just went ahead and taken that acreage and increased the tonnage it's going to produce. Once that main crop's gone, guess what? Don't worry, we got fall, winter, spring coming, and that can handle a whopping of feeding.
It's huge because, you know, where we're at, that fall, winter, spring blend can start growing as early as February. And so it can provide a tremendous, highly nutritious, high energy,
coming
high
out of
protein.
dormancy.
Yes.
And resume growing again.
And this stuff that we have growing right now, April 20th, 21st, whatever, you know, it's probably 22% protein, but it's so high in digestible energy. And Mother Nature's not going to allow a buck to start devoting nutrients towards antler growth until he's got his body weight built back up. And so if we ignore that step, there is no way that deer can get the food he needs for his genetic potential in antler growth.
Over winter, these whitetails are running a negative energy balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Big, that mature buck, has lost, and think about this, he's dumped 25 to 30% body weight during the rut, 2 months. And now, up in these areas that actually experience true winters, he's running a negative energy balance all winter long, meaning he's consuming less calories than his body's burning. You get him into spring, that first thing he's doing is exactly what you're talking about. He's building that body back up before he... But if you're able to have a high-quality feeding program over winter, they come into spring so much better off. And now you got the fall, winter, spring coming up. And boom, that's how you can really nail it. We're legal, where you can really nail this stuff out of the park.